welcome back to Promoted. I'm your host, Felicity Furey, CEO and co-founder of We Aspire. You are listening to the podcast that helps you get promoted and be great when you get there. I am joined once again by the fabulous Renee Wootton, engineer, speaker, and future astronaut. I'm going to go with today, Renee. How are you?
So great to see, as always. And I love that you always do like a different intro for me. It's also very exciting. But yes, I would love to be an astronaut one day. We'll see where our careers take us and where our aspirations take us. It's always good to set the bar high. But awesome to be here today. Felicity, what are we talking through today?
We have a fabulous topic which came through my DMs on LinkedIn from the amazing Emma. Shout out, Emma. Thank you for listening to the podcast and giving us your feedback. This question today is focused around how do you, I'm going to phrase it a different way. It is focused on the cumulative effect when you get positions or awards early in your career that are, you could say, advanced or accelerated. And today we're going to dive into the pros and cons for this, because certainly there are some cons when you're getting roles that are maybe a few steps ahead of you, and how do you navigate that? So we're going to dive in on that today. Now, Renee, I know you're someone who has been promoted, gotten incredible opportunities early in your career, or some might perceive early, maybe it's just super normal to you. Like for me, I'm like, obviously Renee would get those amazing opportunities because brilliant.
That's so nice of you.
How has it impacted your career, or has it felt like you got those opportunities early? Maybe we start there.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And thanks again, Emma, for writing through. It is really nice to have our audience give us feedback and also ask some more direct or detailed questions too. The cumulative effects of getting recognized early have huge benefits, but to your point, can also be quite challenging as well. And I guess it comes back to your mindset and how you perceive yourself, how much imposter syndrome impacts you, how much support you have around you to really be able to take the opportunities presented to you and run as hard as you can with them. I think, reflecting on my mindset very early on in my career, I remember when I got my first internship with Qantas, I was 17 or just turned 18, and I remember having the opportunity when I was 18 to apply for an internship program, which was an exchange to British Airways. And it was an opportunity to go and spend some time in London and work with a new team. And I was really excited by the opportunity, and it was just an advertisement that had come out to say that, hey, we're going to be running this exchange program, apply within, essentially. And thankfully enough, at the time, it was an engineering exchange. So I was already in the engineering team, and so just had some conversations with managers and decided, yep, I'm going for this and I want it badly. And what I think that opportunity did for me was it was twofold. So it got me noticed in the team. And the reason it got me noticed is because I had to present to the executive leadership team at like 18 years old. It was a huge feat for me at the time. I felt completely out of my, completely out of my depth, but I also knew that I had the backing and support of the executive manager of engineering. So while he was sitting at the table with all of his direct reports and I was trying to convince them all, I kind of had a subtle confidence, but I was still incredibly overwhelmed. And inevitably I got the opportunity, and it was a game changer. What it did is it built my confidence. It showed me that by pitching and going hard and really backing yourself, you can get opportunities. And while I was over there, it was actually perceived that I was already a professional engineer. I'd graduated from uni, and the team were convinced I was a lot older than I actually was. And I was like, oh God, no, I'm not sure how I pulled that off. But again, I had their support when I got there, and I was given everything I needed to succeed. So I think that, in order to, capitalize on this accumulative effect of getting opportunities, getting awards, doing great things, getting promoted, it can't just be done in a silo. You need an army of people around you to back you, support you, but you also have to be willing and ready to say yes when the opportunity comes and not back down. And if you get that yes, then what are you doing in all of those kind of aspects of your life to make sure you've got that army of support behind you, so that when you do have that self-doubt, which will inevitably come with any change in your life, How do you respond to it and respond to it quickly and get ahead of that curve? What do you think, Felicity?
Gosh, you said so many great things there that I'd love to unpack with you. I think one piece was around that mindset. And there's this quote that I love. I watched this movie recently called Project Iceman, and it was about this guy who said, I want to do something completely different. He'd been in a management consulting gig most of his life. He'd done the right things. He'd gone to uni, got a job, ticked all the boxes, and he was, I think, bored and felt like he had this unfulfilled potential. So the film, you can watch it on YouTube. It's absolutely brilliant. Is he goes to Antarctica and does an Ironman in Antarctica, which is absolutely insane, super challenging to do. And I feel like the whole premise of the movie is around limitations and what your limitations are. And there's a quote in there, I think it comes up at the end, is the only one who can say what your limitations are you, and limitations are perceptions. And I feel like that message really resonated with me. And that piece that you were talking about earlier, Renee, was that mindset. So I think there's a piece that starts with you around what's your mindset and what are those kind of perceived limitations. And depending on your culture or your background or where you grew up or the environment you've been in, a lot of that can be projections of other people's limitations on you, or it could be your own limitations. So I think there's been a bit of a dance for that for me throughout my career, of me having a limitation, like, oh, could I possibly do that? And also people telling me like I've had people say, literally, you can't do certain things, which I've proven them wrong. So I think there is a dance of, where do you want to go? I am such a believer in anything is possible, and that you can find a way to make something happen. And the movie was fantastic in kind of demonstrating that. And that's the first piece is, who are you? What's your perception? And where do you want to take things, and really dreaming big. The other piece is, I think, backing it up with that experience or credibility, or the actual experience of doing something. So for me, similar to you, Renee, I had some experiences early on in my career. I was given the role as a project manager when I was, I think, 22 years old. And they literally said, this guy's leaving in 2 weeks. You can have his projects. And I looked at this guy. He was probably like late 50s, early 60s. And I went, oh my gosh, I graduated 18 months ago. There's no way I could take on his projects. And I remember one of my colleagues said to me, they wouldn't have given it to you if they didn't think you could do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just amazing. So I started on this journey, did these projects, and then I was looking at moving on from that organization, and I met with a recruiter and I said, I'm a project manager. And they pretty much laughed in my face. They were like, you are not a project manager. You are, you had like such little experience in your career. And for them, a project manager was someone who might have run a massive infrastructure project, maybe from the contractor side or from the builder's perspective. So that was quite interesting, because I thought, that's really strange. I've been doing this job as a project manager for nearly 3 years, but you're saying that's not what I am. So I think having that like perspective really helped of, okay, what could I do, talking about those skills. So I was very fortunate to get an experience like that early on, which I think kind of stepped me up. Sounds like similar to you, Renee, where people saw the capability that you did have and put you in those positions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to that accumulative effect, it really does have an accumulative effect, because I think what Emma's point around the awards does is it really helps build almost your street cred to a degree. So you've got incredible brands and really well-known awards, events and organisations that back these opportunities to support up and emerging youth. And what it does is, when your name is presented, it gives people a perception that, hey, you've been assessed by a panel. This organisation has backed you and your references, and now says that you're worthy of an award that would be, I imagine, quite competitive. And it helps people really go, okay, this person's out there, they're chasing things. They're being rewarded for that. They're being recognised. What are we potentially missing here? Like, why haven't we seen their capability? Or, great, that person is now being recognised for their capability. And it just kind of keeps your name floating around in different spheres, to be honest. And I think we talk about this in another episode. chasing an award for the sake of an award is not necessarily something that I have done. It's not something I would endorse, but it's something that if you're doing incredible work and potentially not getting the opportunity to network with people outside of your immediate bubble, outside of your immediate organization, awards and opportunities like that have an ability to connect you with incredible people outside of your immediate sphere, which is really important because what that does is it gives you perspective, it gives you more opportunity, whether that's, opportunities for jobs, whether that's getting mentoring, whether that's learning about a different industry. And what that can help you do is really curate, well, where is your passion? Where should your focus be? Because you will innately and naturally follow things that you really love and that really kind of appeal to you. So what it does is it just gives you more options, and that can come in so many different ways to continuously support you and help you kind of get to that next level. The way I like to think about it is, Felicity, you were nominated and recognised as one of the AFR 100 Women of Influence, and that was quite early on in your career. And what that's gone on to do is really back you with an incredibly reputable organisation. It's led you to build incredible networks, and it's kind of fostered your ability now to have conversations with clients and build your own business today, knowing that you've got that credibility behind you. So it has an immense and a hugely cumulative impact on the conversations you're having, the opportunities, and just your ability to keep moving forward.
Totally. And that what really was a game changer for me. I was 26 when I received that award and was so fortunate to have a mentor who suggested I nominate. I really thought, oh my gosh, there's no way I could do that. And put myself forward and was named in that 100 Women of Influence list in the first year. And I was 26 at the time, and it was quite surprising. And it really, like you said, gave that stamp of approval. It's kind of like if you have an engineering degree qualification, there's a certain standard that needs to be met to receive that qualification. Engineers Australia goes about certifying organisation or universities within Australia to get that. So it has that kind of knowing stamp of approval. And I feel like awards can be a great way, like you said, Renee, to go, yep, this person is credible, and you're associating that person's brand now with the Australian Financial Review, which is depending on your perspective, a credible brand in the business space. And that, can really turbocharge you. And I certainly didn't start Power of Engineering and not-for-profit to receive awards. It was a really nice bonus, but I really saw the power of that, the platform that it gives you. And even, I did a presentation just this week. It was an online one, and someone was reading out my bio, and there were people doing the clapping reactions on Teams as they were talking about the awards that I had received. So it's very helpful, I think, to position myself in a way of credibility to people hear that I've received that award, and it gives you that certain credibility in what you're doing, and then means that it opens those other doors to say, oh, okay, well, this person must have done something to receive this. So it's been incredibly powerful for me. But I think also that the flip side, which we alluded to at the beginning, is what are kind of the drawbacks or the challenges when you do get promoted early or you do get these opportunities early. I think for me, a challenge has been in some ways my own mindset, like, oh, who am I? Am I good enough? And like, it's had to have me back myself. And then it's also meant that opportunities have presented themselves that they wouldn't. And I go, oh, can I actually do it? And I think there's lots of ways that you can test your own capabilities in a safe environment rather than testing it, on the job or with projects or with clients. And I've certainly found having mentors have really helped me in testing my thinking, because I think a lot of the time when you are a leader, it is about the way that you think. And a strategy that I found helpful is even speaking to a few different mentors about something like, hey, I've got this scenario, how would you address it? And see how they would check their thinking and go, okay, great, I'm aligned with that. Or if you have 3 people, you might be aligned with 2. And then a third one might be different, but you can, okay, why would you approach it that way? Explain your thinking around that. So that's really helped me test, okay, am I on the right track? Am I on the right path? Even though there might be a gap with, say, my age and my, perceived experience that I need for a role, because often I think with leadership, it comes down to that way of thinking, and you can leverage that from mentors. What have you found has helped, Renee?
Yeah, I love hearing your experience. And I'm actually just thinking about the analogy, you are what you eat right now. So I'd love to extend that analogy to say you are what you think. So I almost think, if you play into the perception of others, then you will inevitably become that. So if you don't have a supporter and someone is undermining you potentially because of your age or the way that you look and those sorts of things, if you listen to that, then, it's more than likely that that's the story you're telling yourself in your head, and that will lead to those sorts of outcomes. Whereas if you go, yeah, thanks for that feedback, not really something that's going to help me, and it's not useful for me, and it's actually affecting my mindset. So I'm just going to compartmentalize that, move it on, and then, keep that mindset really sharp around, I'm here, I'm going to succeed, and nothing's going to prevent me from achieving my goal. And I agree with you wholeheartedly around the imposter syndrome is probably the biggest con that you need to overcome. And if I think about, the first time I stepped into an executive role, I was 29 when I stepped into that role. And whilst I've held leadership roles, for a lot of my career towards the end of my 20s, jumping from a leadership role into an executive role is a very different it's a different approach. It's a different way of thinking. The accountability is higher. You're now leading a team. So you need to be thinking from the perspective of your team, from yourself, from your manager. Just everything really relies on your ability to succeed, which will be driven by your mindset. I have to say, when I first stepped into that executive role, I probably didn't sleep well for the first 2 months in that job. And I also have to admit, almost every job that I've walked into prior to that exec role, I've picked up within the first couple of months. I think my last 2 roles have been the most challenging. And that's because I had to think completely differently to how I'd ever thought before. And so you're playing this game of catch up in trying to be a great leader, to think about things from an executive lens, to deliver your work with integrity, to communicate really effectively, to bring your team along with all the change that you're trying to implement, and to build a team in the first instance. Like, it was such an overwhelming period in my life. And I had a lot of self-doubt in that time too. Like, holy shit, this is really impacting my mental health, my physical health. I'm not sleeping well. My stress levels are really high. But I kept coming back to, I won't let this beat me. I am going to succeed. And so in order to do that, I had to build that network again. I had to make sure I was communicating really effectively with my manager. I just had to keep thinking outside the box, like, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to think about this differently? And inevitably, I got through that 2-month period, and then things slowly started becoming easier. And it certainly hasn't been an easy period, but because I got through that hard period, now what it's done is help me go, all right, I'm now looking ahead to my next role. And even though it's going to be change, it's going to be potentially more accountability, I'm going to have to be thinking about things even differently once again. I'm ready for that change, and I'm not scared of it now because I just got through such a hard period of transition. So the con was my mindset and the imposter syndrome, and just how quickly I had to learn. And so the stress levels. And if you can't manage stress well, then that's probably the game changer between different people, to be honest, is how much do you back yourself and how much support do you have, and what is that story in your mind? And if those 3 things aren't there, that can really be the difference between someone succeeding in a huge period of change and someone not making it. And that's where I would really encourage people that are listening to us on the podcast, reach out to us and ask us. And we could probably help you with connecting you with a mentor, answering a question that you have, and just building your confidence, because it really does take a village of people to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, totally. I feel like you alluded to this at the end there, Renee, was those kind of questions that you ask yourself. And for me, one is, how can I make it work? Like, this is really challenging, but how could it be possible? How can I get around this? Are there questions like that you have for yourself in those challenging situations?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I almost deal with it on a daily basis at the moment, where I see some team members or peers or just, people in my broader circles, they go, oh, I can't get to this step, so therefore I can't do this piece of work. And my immediate thought is like, there's so many other ways you can cut a piece of fruit. Like, what are you trying to achieve here? If you're determined to hit that goal, think differently. So can you speak to somebody else? Can you escalate it? Can you, you have to think about all of your options and making sure that nothing stops you. And, a great, I guess, personal experience I have around that is I knew I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, and I didn't know the path to get there, but I was given one option, which was a bridging course, doing a diploma first, and then stepping into my aerospace engineering degree, because I didn't get the marks to get straight into the university I had my eyes set on. So I figured out, if I go through this alternative pathway to be able to get the degree that I want at the university that I want, then that's going to unlock an opportunity. Now, the path to get to that end result took me 5.5 years. And it was incredibly challenging. It was, how do I turn up every day at the same time? And how do I make sure that I deliver these assignments to the right level? And how do I learn quickly when I'm already behind the 8 ball because of the school that I went to, and the learning kind of techniques that I had then. So again, how do you think broadly? I need to learn how to learn again. I need to have support to be able to learn quickly. I need to turn up at the same time every day, which means I need to have good sleep, which means I probably shouldn't party too much. Thinking about, how do I solve this problem in all of the facets? It's not just as easy as saying there was a blocker and therefore I couldn't get to what I wanted. There's so many layers that you have to consider. So we encourage you that when you're thinking about trying to achieve a goal, really sit down, write down all the aspects, write down all your options that you have. And if you don't have that many options, then you need to start speaking to other people that can show you what options you have.
Yeah, it can be really simple things. Just reminded me of when we did our very first Power of Engineering event, and I had in my mind, okay, to send the invitation to the schools, I need to have worked out all the workshops, all the site tours, have everything mapped out. And then I realized that was actually going to take a lot of time. And we only had a short period of time to send these invitations out to schools. I think it was November that we had the idea to come up with this event, and it was going to happen on International Women's Day on the 8th of March the following year. And bear in mind, there's school holidays in between that. So that basically just cuts out 2 months. So we had a really short window to get everything organized and invite people. And then I had this thought of, do I actually need all of that to send the invitation out? And I thought, well, no. What are the schools and what are the teachers going to care about? They're going to care about, it's this hands-on day about engineering. So we know there's going to be site tours. We know there's going to be workshops. We know there's going to be speakers. They don't care that they're going to go to this specific workshop on this specific topic. The concept is what's important. So we sent out the invitation, and even without all the details figured out, and within 3 days, we had over 100 students that were coming to the event. By the end of the week, we had 200. So we said, okay, let's put on a second event. So they didn't actually need that information. And that's a really simple example, but I think often we go, oh, well, I can't, I can't do that because of this. So I think that's such a great mindset to have. If you do have this opportunity come up, you're not quite sure how to achieve it, is, okay, say yes, take that time to work it out, and actually build those skills that you might need to get into that role. It can be a bit elusive too if you are wanting to go for a role that you've never done before and it is a step up. What are those skills that you need? Often those jumps, like you said, Renee, are positions where you are having to think completely differently. So if you are, say, in a technical engineering role and you're taking on your first leadership role, then the skills for the leadership role are pretty much none of the technical experience that you've been for. And we actually have spent a lot of time thinking about this at We Aspire. And we've just released a report, which is all around building leaders and what's working on building that leadership pipeline. And we've done lots of research with a whole range of academic papers, books, all about what are those steps through. And what we put together in that report, it's free to download, no email required, is what it does that leading yourself stage look like, leading your first group of people, and then leading leaders, and what are those skills that you need to master in each of those steps. One thing that I thought was really fascinating was, and this is from the book, The Leadership Pipeline, it talks about at each level, what are the skills? How do you spend your time? And then where do you put value on work? So when you're an individual contributor, the value is placed on producing things. Then when you take that next step up, the value is placed on delegation. And then as you go through the pipeline to more senior executive roles, there's actually 6 stages the book talks about in the leadership pipeline. It's a very intense, dense book, but it's so valuable, all the different stages, all the way up to functional manager and executive leader, the CEO, what you need to place your skills, time, and value on. And it's absolutely fascinating, those little shifts. And I think a framework like that can really help people who are stepping into that unknown and stepping into that uncertainty of a role. What do those puzzle pieces look like before you get there? So check out the report. It's on the We Aspire website and you can download it for free. Renee, this has been a fantastic conversation. Anything you want to add before we wrap up today's episode?
No, I'm just looking forward to reading this report in detail myself. I've dug in a little bit, but I'm really keen to reflect on that framework as well in my own personal journey. So thank you to you and Michael for preparing that and putting that together. I would just love to summarize and probably recap. So this was about the accumulative effect of taking promotions, being recognized early. What we've really shared with you is there's a multifaceted approach. For us, it's really about skills generation, being aware of the skills you need to make each step up, and then having recognition, your reputation, your brand being promoted with incredible organizations to really back and upholster the fact that you are going places, you are credible, you have integrity, and you're really making an impact. So keep all those things in mind. As always, please reach out. We are always here to support you. We appreciate that it really does take a village to succeed in a career. So we are here. We've got your back. That's it from me today, Felicity.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. We will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye.